Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot! Artest looking, gets it Bryant. Bryant Tillman has to put it up for the buzzer. Banks it! Oh! He banks it!
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Scotty Talks NBA. As you already know, we are brought to you by DSM Media. So make sure, if you're not already, make sure you follow at DSM_media on Twitter. Today, I am accompanied by two very special guests. You guys already know my co-host from Turf Talk, also the host of Faithful Fanatic, Dylan Davis. You can find him on Twitter at DylanJD98. But I am also here with Sixers Wire editor, lead editor, I should say, for USA Today, Kai Carlin. You can find Kai at Kai_Carlin. Kai, Dylan, how are you guys doing today, my friends?
I'm good, man. Thank you a lot for having me on, man. Appreciate it.
Of course, and thank you for coming on, as always. What about you, Dylan? How you doing, my man?
I'm good, man. You said two very special people. I don't know about two. There's probably just one here, but because everyone sees too much of my face around here, but I'm good.
Glad to hear it. So we're going to dive, obviously, into some heavy Sixers talk today. As Kai covers the Sixers directly, we're going to get a lot of his, inside thoughts as far as the Sixers and how they're doing this season. So I'll dive right into it, Kai. The first thing I want to start with is really, coming off this huge, I call it a huge win last night, because obviously you don't have Embiid. You go out there and beat the third seed in the West. They had Morant. They had some of their lead dogs out there. So no excuses for them. What are some of your main takeaways from that game last night, seeing that team perform like that without Embiid? And then a caveat question to that, thoughts on January as a whole as well.
Well, I'll start with the Memphis game. It was an impressive win. I mean, we can't really understate that win. I mean, as you said, Memphis had Morant. They had Jaren Jackson Jr. Desmond Bane was out there. Steven Adams was out there. And Sixers were able to withstand a lot of runs. They withstood a lot of adversity. They withstood a lot of crazy, acrobatic Morant layups where it really just kind of looked like Ja was going to take their heart by himself. And in the past, the Sixers would kind of wilt, to that. But Doc even said after the game, Doc was like, listen, I had to tell the guys, those acrobatic layups, it may seem like more than 2 points, but I promise you, they're just 2 points. I promise you. And that was something that Doc had to tell the team. Andre Drummond, even after the game, was like, yeah, we had to kind of keep pushing and just pretty much ignore it. Hell of a win. Tyrese Maxey with 33 points, Tobias with 31. I really feel like it was just a really just great performance all around for them. In terms of January for the month, a lot of people are going to be like, oh, the Sixers are turning this around, but I feel like we still have to kind of see a little bit more. And the reason why I say that is because you look at some of their wins in January, right? They beat the Houston Rockets twice. The Rockets aren't a good team. They beat the Orlando Magic twice. The Magic are the worst team in the league record-wise. They got some good pieces, but in terms of, record-wise, they are the worst team in the league at the moment. I do love Franz Wagner, though, and Cole Anthony. Those two guys, I like Orlando's talent there. But who else did they beat? They beat the San Antonio Spurs twice. Yeah. And the Spurs are better than the two teams I mentioned, but the Spurs aren't the Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili Spurs anymore. They're not there anymore. Right. So they beat the Spurs twice. That they beat, at the time, the Boston Celtics were struggling at the time. And they beat them. Celtics have since turned it around a little bit, but still. I don't know what to make of them. They play the Washington Wizards on Wednesday. That should be a win. That'll complete a 5-game homestand. But the 3 games after are what I'm interested in. They go to Dallas, then they go to Chicago, then they come home and host Phoenix. And those 3 games are going to be – I feel like those 3 games are going to kind of tell you a little bit more about this team.
Tell us exactly where they're at. And something I'll throw in there, and I'll let you get right to it, Dylan. But Those 3 losses in January, if you can remember them, I remember them like yesterday because they were brutal losses. And, you know, it was because they were losing to teams that they shouldn't have in those 3 losses as well. So just something to, you know, a side note to throw in there. But go ahead, Dylan.
I don't know if there were losses that they shouldn't have lost to. Charlotte's a good team.
Charlotte, that is correct. Charlotte is a good team. It was
Washington,
kind of the way they lost.
Washington is a team that also gives them trouble as well. I mean, I know Sixers have beat the Wizards in their first matchup with them the day after Christmas, but the Wizards are another team that kind of gives them issues, especially in DC. Like, I think last year was their first win in DC in like 10 years. Yeah, it was something crazy like that. So,
who was the blown loss to? I forget. I'm drawing a blank. Yeah, that's right.
The Clipper loss. That's another one. That's another one. Up 24. And they lose to a Clipper team missing Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. So, again, it's just like, how good is this team really? Like, for me, guys, I like their talent. Joel is obviously an MVP candidate. That dude is incredible. And Tyrese Maxey has been awesome. But when you look at this roster, unless they do make a move, which it doesn't look like they are, right, depending on the matchup, they're probably out round 1.
All right. You mentioned Tyrese going head-to-head with John Morant last night. You just mentioned Joel as well. So I'm going to try to word this question as best as possible. What do you think it is when you see Tyrese play without Joel and you see the numbers, right? Obviously, the numbers are going to be higher because when Joel's on the floor, he demands the ball almost every possession. He's going to take the most amount of shots on the team about every night. He's going to demand a ton of the offense. So obviously, Tyrese's numbers are going to go down. But what do you think it is, the difference of seeing him with his own unit, I guess you could say, compared to when Joel's on the floor? Is it a mental thing? Is it the youth showing and he's taking a back seat to Joel? Is it the speed of the game? Like last night, Scotty said it best earlier. Like it looked like he's playing 100 miles per hour last night. When Joel's in the game, it's half court sets. The game slowed down a ton. What do you think it is with Maxey where he's not quite tapping into this, breakout player with Joel on the floor next to him?
Well, because you just mentioned it. When Joel's off the floor, somebody's got to score, right?
Right.
Yeah. So
I feel like it's so drastic if you get there's a big difference to me.
Well, I agree to a certain extent, just because when Joel's off the floor, again, somebody's got to score. Right. So that would go to Tyrese and Tobias, and they both, they did so in a big way against Memphis.
Right.
When Joel's with them, it doesn't matter who's on the floor. The offense runs through Joel. Right. It doesn't matter who else is on that floor. You are going to slow the game down and dump that thing into Joel, and Joel will do what he does. So when it comes to Tyrese and Joel's partnership, at this point, it's all about continuing to grow them into more of a pick and roll type of thing, at least in my opinion, rather than because Tyrese is more of a go downhill. Right. Scotty and Dylan, you two just mentioned it. It looked like he played 100 miles per hour against Memphis, right? But when Joel comes back, you're not playing 100 miles per hour, right? Because the Joel's 7 feet tall and 600 pounds, and he wants to be, the most skilled big man of all time. So, like that's my thing. Like a lot of people are like, "Oh, why is Tyrese's numbers down when Joel comes back?" And it's just because Joel's the guy. He's got to get the ball. So, just at this point, it's more just about growing the 2-man game with them, which I know that's something Joel wants. Like he wants to build it with Tyrese. So that'll come. I mean, he's 21, so a lot of people got to kind of remember that too.
setting lofty expectations for Tyrese in his second year at 21.
I mean, he's been a very impressive 21-year-old.
Yeah, for sure.
He's 21.
Exactly.
Like the dude just became legal to drink like a couple months ago.
Yo, real quick, Scotty, before you get to your next question.
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
Watching last night's game and watching Desmond Bane should not be able to shoot the way he shoots. The dude's his shoulders are out here. He's built like a brick house. And what's he shoot from 3? 40%?
I think 44.
44%.
That's not physically possible. The dude's built like a brick house.
He's skilled. Honestly, I'm surprised to see that he dropped to Memphis at 30. I didn't have him in my mock draft. I did not have him going past Philadelphia at 21.
Yeah.
I thought Miami was going to pick him. Instead, they picked Precious Achiuwa, which turned out to be an interesting pick. And then obviously Sixers picked Tyrese Maxey. But yeah, I'm surprised Desmond Bane lasted in the first round the way that he did. He was a very good player at TCU.
Yeah. Just curious, where did you have Maxey in like your pre-draft?
I had Maxey in the lottery.
Okay.
So yeah, we talked to Kai the night of the draft, right when that was happening. Now, no one thought Maxey was slipping to 21.
Yeah, I had Maxey in the lottery. I think I had him somewhere between 11 and 15, so maybe just outside the lottery. But like, yeah, I thought there was no way he was going to be there at 21.
Which is probably where he may. It's hard to say, as far as situations once rookies come in. Philly might have just been a great opportunity. Obviously, with Ben, out this season for us to even see this, so it's hard to say what would have happened if he went somewhere else. But I guess the next thing I wanted to ask you about, Kai, maybe a good place to start. Obviously Tobias Harris, he had a way better January than what the rest of his season has gone. Where are you at with Tobias Harris right now? Is this like what we should expect? Should we temper it a little bit down from what happened in January? Because it looks very similar to the way he looked last season, I guess you could say. He looks decisive. He looks aggressive. Weaker competition, as you have mentioned already. Where are you at with Tobias Harris right now?
Well, for one, I wish the fan base would back off, like just a little bit. I mean, it's not Tobias's fault. He's got a huge contract. I mean, you got to remember that once they lost Jimmy, they couldn't let Tobias go, for one. So, like, once Jimmy left, they couldn't let Tobias go, especially considering they gave up draft picks to the Clippers and Landry Shamet and everything else. They could not let Tobias go. And then also, what is Tobias going to do? No, I don't want that money. Like, you guys to pay me so much less. Oh, so I mean, like that. That's something that like a lot of people got to kind of figure out. Like, I don't want that much money. I mean, come on. So I will say with that contract, it does come expectations, but I do wish the fan base would kind of like, back off a little bit. Here's my thing with Tobias. If there's anybody who misses Ben Simmons, it's him. And it's just because Ben was able to obviously grab rebounds and immediately push the ball up the floor. Just get out. Tobias, all you got to do is catch, finish, shoot, some stuff like that. This year, you're noticing it. You didn't see it a lot in January because Tyrese was able to develop a little bit more. But you've seen it all season long. Tobias is bringing the ball up the floor because he's – excuse me. But he's a veteran. He's a guy who can handle the ball. Tyrese is, again, he's 21.
Right.
So you're not trying to put as much pressure on Tyrese to handle the ball and go up against elite defenses like that and continue to, grow and turn the ball over and things of that nature. So Tyrese is beginning to come along in that area, which then coincides with Tobias being like, dude, all you got to do is catch and attack or catch and shoot.
Yeah. So
that's kind of where the fact that Tobias was able to turn things around a little bit is when, like that's when things begin to work better for you.
Right, when he doesn't have to put as much effort towards scoring. Because you could see early on, I mean, he was coming back from COVID. He was obviously fatigued from that, but then also just the heavier workload. So you kind of already answered my follow-up question to that. Because I was going to ask you, was the criticism fair? And then the other side of that, the lack of praise that he's kind of received throughout this month when he's actually shooting efficiently, his numbers are up. Should the fan base just kind of be like right in between there of giving praise and, kind of criticism? How do you feel about that?
I don't know, because fans are going to be fans.
Right.
But some of the stuff I see like on Twitter just kind of blows my mind.
Right.
Some of the stuff that like people say, which is why I don't go on Twitter often. I go on Twitter during the game. And then that's kind of about it. I'll be honest with you, if it wasn't for my job, I wouldn't even have Twitter. I think it's pointless.
I say that all the time.
Kind of toxic, man. It is very toxic.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you. I've gotten some crazy messages from Sixers fans for the past like 5 years. So I wouldn't even have it if it wasn't for my job.
No.
My thing is with Tobias is, and again, it's just like he's so important to what they want to do, right? He's very important to their offense. He's very important as a leader. He's a guy who's not afraid to speak up when the time calls for it, right? And that's almost invaluable to have a guy who can keep a team calm in certain situations. Like that's why Danny Green is so important too. Like but yeah, Tobias is just he's an important piece, which is why it was so frustrating for I'm sure it was for the fan base to look at him and be like, oh my God, how are you missing these easy layups? How are you missing these shots? There was a lot thrown at him in November and December and just going into January. Like there was a lot thrown at him. But what's really helped him a lot, again, has been Tyrese's ability to grow as a point guard. That's kind of been the biggest thing. And now that he's got it, that helps the Sixers as a whole.
Yeah, Scotty, I think my biggest beef or issue with like Sixers fans on social media is like the Tobias haters specifically. They'll be loud and clear about their feelings with him when he's playing bad, as he did in November and December, and then they won't walk any of that back. They're just silent until that next 9-point game comes out and it's back to the max contract type of thing. Like criticism's fair as a fan. Like you're allowed to criticize and critique, but like you said, Kai, like the contract isn't on him. So yes, when he has 9 points on 4 of 14 shooting, you're allowed to criticize, but keep the, you're a max contract player. I need more. That's a separate conversation. Like I know people don't want to disclude money, but you have to because it's a different conversation. Following up from that, I guess we can get into that Ramona Shelbourne piece today, I guess, Scotty. Not how surprised were you by it, but what were your thoughts on the piece? If you read it all, I'm sure you did, but what were your overall thoughts on the Ben Simmons piece today?
For me, the biggest thing that I took from it was still him being upset that Joel and Doc said what they said after Game 7. And then him feeling slighted because he didn't say anything about Joel Embiid after his poor play in the 2019 series with the Toronto Raptors. And I can get what Ben is saying from a certain standpoint because, I'm pretty sure we've all played organized sports, right? At least at some point in our lives. Mm-hmm. So, so when we played organized sports, like when you're on a team like that, if you had a teammate that had a bad game, you're not going to, talk trash on them. Mm-hmm. You're going to want to encourage them. And maybe that's where Ben feels slighted. Like he maybe thought that he should have deserved some, some encouragement and things like that. But my thing is though, like if you want to go back to 2019, sure, Joel shot the ball poorly. Like look at Joel's shooting numbers in that series; they were terrible. And I know he was sick in Game 4. He had the gastro, and they blew a chance to go up 3-1. But Joel did take a lot of criticism from that series, like from everybody. Joel took a lot of criticism, but Joel, he kind of became a better player. Like he took it, he heard it, agreed with it, and moved on with his life. And he moved forward and became obviously an MVP runner-up last year. And he's probably going to be in the MVP conversation this year. My thing with Ben is at some point, and I know Ben said it after Game 7, like, I got to be better in everything. That's the last time Ben spoke publicly. But in this situation, man, like just, I don't know, it's kind of getting petty at this point. And it kind of feels like, Keith Pompey and I, we actually just recorded our podcast episode for Locked On 76ers earlier in the day. And Keith kind of said something about like, they're kind of like Ben and the Sixers are like a divorced marriage that isn't divorced yet. They're just kind of separated, but they just keep talking trash on each other until the divorce becomes official. That's kind of what it seems like right now.
Go ahead, Dylan.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, the one interesting thing you said in the beginning of it is, like, Ben feels like, they should have had his back or encouragement. Bro, you've been getting encouragement for 4 years. You've been enabled not to shoot the ball for 4 effing years. What do you want more? Oh, attaboy, Ben, get him next time. Secondly, the series when Joel Embiid was, like, they were, like, the Sixers were a minus like 100 when Joel Embiid wasn't on the floor in the Toronto series. So like, miss me with that, dude. That is ridiculous.
Yeah, there was that, and then also I don't know if you saw Tom Moore's piece today.
Yes.
But Doc had a one-on-one with Tom, and Tom, asked him about it, and Doc said, "Listen, I've been encouraging Ben literally this entire time. Like I've been praising Ben. I've been the one having his back." Doc said, I guess he had somebody send him tape of all the times he praised Ben Simmons, and he said it was like a half hour or something in Tom's piece. So, like, I don't know. It's kind of at a point where it's clear Ben doesn't want to be here, right? We all get that. He doesn't want to be here. So, the Sixers right now, they're also not just going to trade him for anything, though. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, just trade him for a bag of balls. And it's like, no, he's a top 25 player. Like, I don't care what anybody says about this dude's jump shot. Ben Simmons is still a top 25 player. Like that's how he impacts the game. He's an elite defender, elite playmaker. He makes his teammates better. You can see it. You saw it with Tobias, like through the first, almost half the season, through the first 41 games, So I kind of just look at it, and it's at a point where just like, dude, like, Ben, if you want to come back and play and at least finish out these final 32 games and go to the playoffs, so be it. If he does decide to return, I don't think he does, but let's just say he has a change of heart over the next couple weeks or so.
Yeah.
Then so be it. But it's at a point where just like everybody understands that this is the situation. Ben wants out, and Sixers at this point really just gonna have to kind of figure out how to make it work, because we all know they want James Harden.
Yeah.
So
So I got a kind of a follow-up question, just regarding, and maybe you can like clarify the behind the scenes, how this kind of works, but do you think that Ramona Shelbourne article, it gets released no matter what, right? Like, so even if the Sixers lose the big game last night, then it was already planned to be released this morning, right?
I don't work for ESPN, obviously.
So you can't like speak for them, yeah.
Yeah, it's like I can't speak for ESPN. I don't know when that report is supposed to be released. I mean,
it's like, were they sitting on that?
The timing is definitely a little like oh, come on, dude. They just beat the Grizzlies last night without you, and they're trying to move on and things, So, the timing is definitely a little wild, thinking about it. But no, I don't have. Again, I can't speak for ESPN. I don't work there, so. I mean, I will say that if I was in Ramona's position, like let's just say I had something like that. I don't care if they won or lost. I'm putting it out because it's a big piece. But
right,
yeah,
I gotcha. So kind of, I guess it's another follow-up question to the Ben Simmons situation in general. But you already mentioned you don't think he's going to get moved before the trade deadline. It's becoming kind of obvious at this point.
Yeah.
Is there any move that the Sixers could make that could potentially put them in maybe a second round, contender, or, at least get them out of the first round? I know you already said that you think they're a first round exit at the state that they're at right now.
Well, it kind of depends on the matchup. Like, because the Eastern Conference is so jumbled up, right? Like there's a chance they could play either Brooklyn, Milwaukee in round one. And if they do, I don't like their chances against those teams in a 7-game series. And then even Miami. I know a lot of people like for some reason criticize or down on Miami, but they just made the NBA Finals 2 years ago, and this year they've stocked up. And I love Eric Spoelstra as a head coach. So if they were to be matched up with Miami again, I would lean towards the Heat. But if the Sixers were to face Chicago, I feel like they would beat Chicago just because outside of DeMar DeRozan, there really isn't a lot of playoff experience on that team. It'd be the first time for Lonzo and Zach. It would be only like the third time for Nikola Vucevic, and his 2 times with Orlando, they lost in round one. So it was like, whatever.
Right.
And then Cleveland is one team though that I would kind of be wary of if I'm a Sixers fan, just because the Cavaliers have 0 playoff experience outside of Kevin Love, obviously, but they're long, they're lengthy, they're athletic, and the Sixers are a small team. They're tiny, they obviously have issues rebounding, and trying to rebound against Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, and Love off the bench, and Lauri Markkanen, like that'd be a tough series. I think the Sixers would win, but I guarantee that series would go 7 games, just because Cleveland would definitely give them a lot of issues.
Yeah.
But in terms of a trade deadline piece, Scotty, I guess like I kind of put something out there. I was thinking maybe Eric Gordon, or maybe a guy like Terrence Ross in Orlando, because Ross is more of a guy. He's better served on a championship contender. He's not good on a rebuilding team like the Magic. I mean, you could always go out to Terrence Ross. You could look at Eric Gordon. Goran Dragic is kind of another guy I've kind of floated out there. He's only played 5 games for Toronto. Apparently, he's still down in Miami, kind of working out, preparing for his next move. The Raptors, I'm surprised they didn't trade Dragic before the season started, just because, again, Dragic doesn't really fit their timeline or anything. But, Goran, you could either trade for him, or the Raptors are probably going to buy him out. So, like, you could wait for the buyout market for Dragic, because you need another ball handler. We still don't know about Shake. It's been a month and nobody knows about Shake Milton. Doc kind of gave an update saying he could beat him in a race a couple weeks ago and everything, and so that's a bad sign. Right. So if you're the Sixers, you got to focus on ball handling.
So, yeah, and I'm sorry, I was just gonna say, like, what do you think that's like draft comp? Like, would you have to lose any? I guess you would have to, send a player or two just for roster constraints. But like, what do you think like a trade for those type of players looks like?
I don't think you'd have to give up draft compensation for Terrence Ross or Eric Gordon. Maybe Eric Gordon, maybe, but not like a first round pick.
Gotcha.
And then like as far as players are concerned, you could always give up like a younger guy, because again, people love B-ball Paul and like they love Isaiah Joe and things like that, and I love those guys too. I think their talent's incredible. I think they're going to be really good players, but Paul Reed needs a lot of development, and you're not going to get that on a team like the Sixers right now, because they are so focused on trying to win a championship while Joel is Joel, right?
Yeah.
So that's why Paul Reed's always in the G League, because he needs the necessary court time to develop. And he's not ready yet for consistent NBA minutes. He's not. Every time he goes out there, you can just tell he needs, time. So, but like you could totally move Paul Reed to the Rockets or something, and on a rebuilding team, and continue to get the court time and continue to develop. So he could be a guy you can move for somebody like that.
I like it.
All right. I guess to wrap up this conversation, Scotty, because we know where Kai thinks the Sixers, title contention ends if there's no major move made to help Joel right now. So focusing on Joel and focusing on the center out in Denver, what do you make of the whole thing? Like, just your opinion. Obviously, we don't get to watch a lot of Nuggets, but I've had back and forth with not even Nuggets fans, just people that, I don't know, the calculators, the TI-84s that come out and try to tell you every stat imaginable that Nikola Jokic is leading in. What's your thoughts on the two MVP candidates in the centers? Is Joel the better center?
So, see, this is always like a pointless conversation to me, because if you're building a team, you'll take either one. It doesn't matter. Like, who cares? Like it's the dumbest conversation to me, because listen, Joel, if he played more games last year, he probably would have won MVP. So whatever. But Dylan, I'm telling you right now, if you swapped Joel and Jokic, I promise you the Sixers will still be pretty damn good.
No.
Like that's my thing. Everybody gets so caught up in this MVP conversation, and Joel is so much better than Jokic. Jokic is so much better than Joel, and it's like, dude, it's not so much better. Like they're 1A and 1B when it comes to like centers in the game. It's like I would probably lean towards Joel just because of his defense, and he finished as he's always near the top of the defensive player of the year and things like that. But I promise you, I wouldn't mind having Jokic.
No,
it's just like that's my thing. Like so I like as far as people with the TI-84s and the calculators and everything, I kind of wish they would like put that away and actually be like, oh damn, you know what, both guys are pretty damn good.
Yeah. I was actually going to ask you, as somebody who has covered the Sixers for a long time, like yourself, whenever you're analyzing basketball players and, their game and such, do you kind of find yourself in between? Obviously there's the, use your eyes, like the eye test, obviously. And then there's statisticians, the calculators out there. Like, what do you find more reliable in a sense?
You can totally use a mixture of both, right?
Yeah.
Like you can always use a mixture of both. Like I'm pretty sure, Dylan, Scotty, when we watch these guys, we see the impact Joel has defensively with our eyes. We see it.
Right.
But then we can always bring up the numbers and be like, oh wow, Jokic is having a pretty damn good year defensively. We can always just kind of include all of these things. And the reason why I kind of went on a tangent there a little bit, and the reason why I brought that up is because when I was younger, and I would always have a talk with my grandfather, and I always be like, okay, Pop, who was better, Larry Bird or Michael Jordan? Because my dad, my grandpa obviously grew up in that era, and he was like, oh, grandson, shut up, you'll take either one. It was like the same. And because like he had a point, like Magic Johnson too, like he would always throw Magic Johnson in there too, and because everybody wants to argue about who's better, MJ. Well, I think we can all say MJ, but what I'm saying is like when we talk about these amazing players, it's just kind of like you'll take any of these dudes on your team. So
you almost see people like that's my problem with comparisons. Is like you almost have to tear the other player down in order to build the other player up. You know what I mean? And it's obviously not like that.
Yeah, and I don't think that's it. And like obviously there's a ranking system, right? Like, we will kind of rank players. But when it comes to like certain ones, like for example, Joel and Nikola, it's just like they play the same position. They have such a huge impact on their rosters. And sure, you could probably feel slighted that Joel didn't win MVP last year as a member of the Sixers or even a Sixers fan. Like, you could feel slighted because I'm pretty sure we all know if Joel played more games, he would have won the award. Yeah. But at the end of the day, he didn't. So I don't know. For me, it's just like, dude, I promise you, like you'll take either guy. It's, I'm not here to like kind of tear one guy down and build another one up. I just don't do that.
I feel that. Do you have anything else for Kai today, Dylan?
No, I think that's it, man. I think that's it.
Awesome. Well, Kai, thank you so much, my man. I appreciate you coming on here and sharing your wealth of knowledge. Always love picking your brain, so I hope to see you soon. But if you just want to let everybody know what you're working on, obviously I let everybody know you're editor for the USA Today Sixers Wire, just where they can find you at.
Yeah, of course. You guys can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, Kai_Carlin. It's the same handle for both social medias. And then also you can check me out on SixersWire.com. That has all my writing and stuff. And also you can check out the Locked On 76ers podcast that I do with Keith Pompey. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you once again, Kai, for joining us. Appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you guys, Scotty, Dylan. Thank you guys. Have a good one. I'll talk to you guys later.
You as well, man.
Later, dude.
Peace. Awesome, Dylan. So we got a lot of information there from Kai. And a lot of useful information. It's always nice seeing the perspective of somebody that's so close to the team. Just as far as like what he said about the month of January, I think, I went into it very positive about the month of January. Yeah. And he brought me back down to earth, which is always good. It's an ego crush, I guess you could say.
Listen, I agree. Like, I agree with him. I think that's something we all need to kind of temper our emotions and expectations for the time being. Like, you do have to take it's like the Eagles, right? We got sky high and we didn't take into account the level of competition they played. However, I do think there's a little bit more credit to give. Like, 15-3 over any stretch is an impressive stretch. A win like last night is an very, very impressive win without Joel Embiid. Like, it's a difference-making win, in my opinion. Like, yes, do I need to see them, go and compete against Phoenix and Chicago and who's the final Phoenix, Chicago, and Dallas. Dallas is this Friday. Yeah. You know what? I like to see them go 2-1. Hell, because they go 3-0 over that stretch. Yeah. But you go 15-3 over any 18-game stretch in the regular season, and that's a pretty nice stretch. I do it's tough, man. Trying to be fair and not have your fandom too much involved. It is interesting to think about as is, where do the Sixers match up in the postseason? Like, they very well could be a first round exit, as is, but I think Daryl's going to be busy during the deadline. I just have a hunch. I don't mean Ben's gone. With the way Tobias is playing right now, and when you hear Daryl and Doc talk about Tobias, there's no, thinking that, they want to move Tobias. That's just fans talking, get Tobias out of here. But I do think he adds a couple, what we needed last year, but a little bit better. Like, just like an extra ball handler off the bench, a backup point guard, a scorer off the bench, just things like that. So, Charlie Brown Jr. doesn't have to play anymore. So that Isaiah Joe doesn't have to play 15 minutes when like, you know what I mean? Like, go and just add depth to this team. Scoring to this team is what they really need, because I don't think they're that far off.
Yeah. And, I think you brought up a good point there, regarding, just kind of getting guys. Even, I loved what Isaiah Joe did last night. Like, and I do think he's going to be a shooter in the league. I think he can, eventually get to the point where he's probably like a 3-and-D guy in a rotation, right?
Sure, but are we
like,
joking ourselves
right now?
No.
And so, like, when I look at him, like Kai said about Paul Reed, like, we've had this discussion about Paul Reed, right? Like, Charles Bassey these guys aren't ready to play per se. Which Charles Bassey looked all right last night. Maybe next year for him, but we'll see, right? Like
Charles Bassey came in that game, picked up 2 fouls, dropped a pass, and missed a layup, and I was like, that's enough. Get him out. Get him out.
He shows a defensive prowess sometimes, but nonetheless, it's what we've talked about. It's what you're going to get from these, bottom round draft picks that we're working with. These guys that are in and out of the G League, they're in the G League for a reason. They're trying to get that experience, like you said, the on court time. And so I think exchanging a few of those guys, if it's a Isaiah Joe, a Paul Reed, and bring in some veterans, right? Like maybe bring in a Eric Gort or a Terrence Ross and a Goran Dragic, right? You get a wing and you get a backup.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. I think multiple moves need to be made.
Yeah.
Not difference-making moves like that, but like you can't just go out and grab a George Hill like you did last year. And that's it. Like, no, you need a couple guys, like you said, a backup point guard, a ball handler, like a Dragic, I would love, and then a scorer that can go and get his off the bench, or a sharpshooter off the bench is also very much needed, because, we have this idea in our minds. And again, the level of competition over the last month of games does play into it, right? But they also have some nice wins over, this recent course. Like, you have the KD, they have nice wins over the course of the season. They've beaten the Hawks multiple times. I know the Hawks record is down this year, but they've beaten the Hawks in Atlanta, undermanned. They've beaten Brooklyn, right? Joe, we know that performance. They've beaten the Celtics and the Heat in a back-to-back. They beat the Warriors earlier in the year. They beat the Grizzlies last night like they did shorthanded without Joel. So they have a decent resume. And I think we kind of get this thing twisted where, like, Scotty, if we were so bought in last year with Ben, right? Obviously, Ben is I'm not denying that. But if we had championship aspirations with essentially the same team plus Ben, right? Now, what if I told you Tyrese continues to progress like this the rest of the year, and you go and add some pieces at the deadline in the buyout market? Why are we so? Because Joel has elevated his game to even a higher level.
Yeah.
Why are we so, they're a first-round exit now? Because Joel's better than he was last year. Obviously, it's contingent on Tobias playing like he has recently. It's contingent on Maxey playing like he has recently.
Right.
It's contingent on Seth and Danny being able to shoot, Niang being able to shoot off the bench. Other players have to step up, but like last year, this team's identical, just with Ben Simmons, and we were like 1 seed, championship aspirations, right?
Yeah.
Why is it a first-round exit now?
And to your point, like even thinking about, they even added Niang and Drummond, who we've found to be quality rotational pieces. So obviously it's tough to gauge without Ben, right? Like it's like the missing piece to the puzzle, obviously. But I don't know. I'm with you. I think it is very matchup dependent. I do agree with that with Kai. As far 100%. As like
if they run into Milwaukee or Brooklyn in round one somehow, sure, or the Heat in round one, it's going to be scary. My point is, like, I'm trying to explain as best I can. I feel like I'm getting it jumbled up. Like last year with a lesser Joel Embiid, a lesser Tyrese Maxey, a worse bench, but add Ben Simmons, we were championship contenders, right? This year, we're subtracted Ben Simmons, but as of right now, we have a better bench, which I'm saying go add to. Joel Embiid is even better than he was last year.
Right.
Tyrese Maxey is ascending.
He's basically doubled his production.
Again, Tobias Harris would have to average over 20. Maxey would have to keep up what he's been doing recently. But I think it's crazy to be like what we saw last year and think championship, and now this year we have no desire. We have no, not desire, but we have no, thought process into they could.
Yeah. And I think, even looking at a game last night where you don't have Joel Embiid, right? Seth Curry didn't play great either.
No.
So, it was the Maxey and Tobias show, and they were able to go out there on a night where Ja Morant has, 37 points.
Desmond Bain scored, 34?
Yeah, and Desmond Bain scored 34, and they're hitting these crazy threes. Ja's doing these crazy layups, like Kai had said, which that was, I know somebody commented earlier, that was a great quote by Doc regarding those layups, because I was looking at it and I was thinking the same thing. I was like, what the fuck? Like, he just made that through contact with Andre Drummond and went through the contact for the and one. Like, this game is over. But No, I'm with you. I think, like you said, if they can add just minimum pieces, it's obviously going to be matchup dependent in the playoffs, which it's going to be that way regardless. So you don't want to play Brooklyn or Milwaukee or Miami in the first round regardless, right? But then on the other side of it, it's like, if you see those teams in the second round, like after you get a confidence building first round, I would imagine by the time we would get to that second round opponent, we would have a sense of a feeling as maybe if it's the Nets, maybe we don't think that we're going to win, but we know that we would have a chance. Like, I think by the time we would get to that point,
I guess what I'm trying to say,
go ahead.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that 21 is playing at such a high level, it makes up for some of the things you're missing from 2-5 last year. Like, he's that good with help. I'm not afraid of anybody.
Yeah. And now, and like you said, now if you add other pieces that can also contribute to what you're missing from Ben, then it all comes together, like you 100%. Said. So
Maxey, and dude, and that's the thing, like, Maxey's numbers with Joel, the scoring's not there as much, but Maxey's got his assist totals up per game recently. Like, he's getting 6, 7, 8 assists per game, which is everything.
Yeah.
Like, literally. Are we really going to no, I'm not going to get into it because I'm not going to downplay Ben Simmons, because I do agree with Kai. I know we hate him right now. He's a top 25 player, top 30. I'll stand by that, right?
Yeah.
But like, if we laud him for these triple doubles that were 12 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists, right? And he plays great defense.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, is it that important for those numbers? If Maxey's given 8 assists, Joel's given 5 assists, Tobias is given 4 assists, they're playing good team defense, and Joel's averaging 40. Like, you get my point. Like, I'm trying to word it as I feel like I'm not getting it out how
I know what you mean. Yeah, I honestly think you're kind of putting it out there correctly, honestly. So, because I understand what you're saying. It's, when you look at the improvements that this team's made, whether it's adding pieces like Niang Drummond, Embiid stepping his game up. Now we're seeing Tobias kind of step his game up as well. We're seeing Tyrese Maxey step his game up. If all these happen, go ahead.
I know how to put it, right? Okay. Here was the Sixers last year with Ben, right? This is the peak right here where my hand is. Subtract Ben. They're down here, right?
Right.
But you add in Joel's development and how his progression. Yeah. Tobias plays like he has recently. Maxey continues to play like this. Add pieces at the deadline. Right, so that's my point. Yeah. Like, yes, you're missing Ben, so it goes down from last year.
Championship contending product.
But what other people are doing, what Joel's doing, and if you add at the deadline, you're closer to where you were with Ben, and with Ben, you were championship contenders.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and, I got it out how I wanted to get it out.
Yeah, no, that was the perfect way to put it, because it's exactly what I thought you meant. And looking at Ben Simmons, like you said earlier, I still view him. I don't know, top 25 is a bit of a it's a lot, I guess, for me. But 25 to 30, I would put him in that range of the caliber player, the effect that he can have. And then thinking about him on another team, which I think people don't think about that enough. Like, when the lane is free, Ben Simmons is able to drive when Joel Embiid isn't in that lane. So that he turns into a different player on another team, maybe, right? But it's just funny because in the last couple of weeks, I've gotten in arguments with like Kings fans who say there's no way they would trade De'Aaron Fox for Ben Simmons, or trade Tyrese Halliburton for Ben Simmons, and that Ben Simmons is not better than any of those players. That's not true, period. Like, if you are a basketball mind out there spewing that out, you're a recent
not a
bias.
basketball
You haven't
mind.
watched Ben Simmons play.
They are a Kings fan who's never really watched Ben play outside the times they play the Kings. And all of this recent stuff with how bad he sucks and the Atlanta series and all these issues play into it. It's not a basketball mind taking in what he actually does on a basketball floor.
Right.
They're not a basketball mind if they think De'Aaron Fox is a better player than Ben Simmons.
In what world? Right. You know what I mean? In
those
what
people
world?
Should not be paid attention to. Just like the person that is nonstop in my mentions on Twitter that have the audacity. Whatever. I agree with Kai. When I brought up the Embiid and Jokic thing, I just meant it as like a fun conversation, right? Like, who do you think is the better center? I agree. Jokic is the second best center in the league. Jokic is phenomenal. But I had someone in my mentions put Jokic's numbers this year to all of LeBron James. See, this is what I mean about these calculators. His numbers are better than LeBron's best years in Miami's numbers. So clearly, Jokic is the better player. It's on Twitter. Everyone can go find it. Go at DylanJD98. It's in my mentions. Go ahead. Go find it. It's the charts in there.
Cowboys fan too?
Yeah. But whatever. Fucking calculators.
Calculators, man. That's I really, obviously I figured what Kai's answer would be to that question, but it was kind of like based off the conversation we had with Brock in the spaces the other night before the Lakers and Sixers game. Just use your eyes for once.
That's what I'm saying, bro. And again, and that's not a slight at Jokic. Like, here's what I always say, right? When we talk about Jordan and LeBron, we have a discussion on who's the greatest of all time. LeBron fans get so slighted that I say he's the second best player ever. They get so slighted, right?
Ever.
That's how it is with this conversation. Because I say Embiid's better, it's so crazy to think that he's better than Jokic. It's such a slight. Nikola Jokic is amazing. He is the 1B to the 1A. Right now, I'm not saying forever.
Right.
But if you just use your eyes, like you said, right now, over the last month, this season, who's been better? It's not that difficult. It's not that difficult, I promise you.
My thing is, when you go to their skill sets, ask yourself who is better at each said skill, right? Shooting, whatever the case may be, who's better at each said skill, and you'll find your answers. And where the difference comes in is obviously Nikola Jokic's passing, I should say. Joel Embiid has improved as a passer. It's something that nationwide people don't want to admit this, but Joel Embiid has improved as a passer. I know it's hard for everybody
he doesn't have Jokic's playmaking ability.
Not at all. I'm not saying that. But that margin has lessened a lot this season. But then on the other side of the ball is where you're going to find the separation by Embiid, and it's by a lot more, in my opinion, and that's on the defensive end. So it's a conversation that we can go on for days and not come to a conclusion because it's just that close. So I get what Kai's saying, and I get what you're saying as well. So
they can argue with a wall.
Argue with a wall, man. That's where I'm at. But last thing I wanted to get from you tonight, Dylan, I have the February schedule lined up here because, as Kai hinted at, January's schedule was light as far as competition. It was. They had big wins mixed in there, but it was a light schedule. So I want to go through the 10 games that are in February, scheduled out right now.
All right, go one by one, and let's see what I come to.
I got you. So we'll go one by one, and then I already have mine tallied up, but I'll tally yours up here as well. So obviously on tomorrow, actually, February 2nd, we got the Wizards coming to Philly to play the Sixers.
No Bradley Beal in Philly. That's a win.
So that's a win for you. So then on the 4th, we have the Sixers traveling to Dallas.
You and I will be at the bar watching that game together. That's a win.
Yes, sir. That's a win.
Yes.
We have the Sixers traveling then to Chicago on the 6th. So that's Sunday.
I'm going to go with that's a loss. The Sixers I think they've beaten Chicago both times they played them so far this year. It's in Chicago. If they beat the Wizards and then the Mavs, the win streak's up to what, 7 or 8 at that point?
Yeah,
I feel like a loss is due at that point. I'm going to go with a loss there.
So then after the Bulls, the Sixers head home to play the Suns on the 8th.
The Suns, as of right now, that's what I'm going to take it as. They are a little beat up. I know Ayton's been out for a little while. I'm going to say that the Sixers will win that game.
Yeah, and I get that feeling as well. I'm not gonna lie to you. I did mark it as a loss, like kind of just out of, you know what I mean. But if Ayton is out in that game, that's a whole different ball game. So after the Suns, we have OKC coming to Philly on the 11th. So win. After OKC, this is a back-to-back after OKC. So the very next day on the 12th, the Cleveland Cavaliers come to Philly.
Loss.
I feel that. Then on the 15th, we have Boston coming to Philly again.
Win.
It's a win. On the 17th, we have the Sixers traveling to Milwaukee.
Loss.
So we got a loss. And then you finish out the month with 2 games. So we have the Sixers traveling to Minnesota.
Win.
Win. And then we have the Sixers traveling to the New York Knicks, Madison Square Garden.
Win.
Yeah, I get it. The Knicks are annoying because they've already beat us twice, so we have to win that game.
The Knicks are on a downward spiral at the moment. I will say, so here 2 things out of that schedule. A, I will not be surprised if they lose in Minnesota. I won't be surprised. And
they're a sneaky tough team.
B, if they you could swap with my predictions, I think Chicago and Phoenix. I really do think they go 2-1 over that course. They're not going to go 3-0. I think they go 2-1. But if they beat Chicago, they're going to lose to Phoenix. If they lose to Chicago, I think they'll come home and beat Phoenix. I don't foresee them dropping 2 in a row. I don't see them dropping 3 in a row. But you never know, man. Maybe we are getting, our vision a little skewed here. Our hopes are a little up in the air right now, and. They're not as good as the record shows, but half a game out of first place. What are we at now? 5 wins in a row, 4 wins in a row. I think they're trending the right direction, man.
Yeah, I agree. So, I'll just give you mine really quick. So I agree with you. I have them winning against the Wizards, which the Wizards, the way I look at that is they lost to the Wizards in Washington, and the Wizards kind of embarrassed
no Bradley Beal.
And there's no Bradley Beal. So I think the Sixers may lay it to the Wizards in that game. Mavs, I got them traveling to Dallas, getting that W. I'm not very high on Dallas. I'm not going to lie to you, man. I look at that team and I see Luka, and that's all I see. And maybe I'm making a mistake for thinking that way, but we will see. I do have them beating the Bulls and then losing to the Suns, like you had hinted at earlier. So one of the two they will lose. I agree with you there. OKC win, obviously. Cleveland, I did have a win, but, looking at it back-to-back, Cleveland, young team, energetic. First time we're playing them this season, so we have no experience against that 3 big-man lineup that they run. So I'm going to switch. You know what? For good purposes, I'm going to switch it to a loss just so we win that game.
Yeah, there you go.
You know what I'm saying? I do feel you, though.
Maybe I'll bet on Cleveland.
Right. Bet the spread. I got a win at Boston, similar to you there. And then we both had losses in Milwaukee, both had wins in Minnesota and New York. So we actually finished with the same record after I changed my answer to the Cleveland one. So 7-3 for the month of February, which I don't think that's too much to ask. Let me just look here. So, the Wizards,
at minimum, you have to go 6-4.
Exactly. I'm looking at the Wizards. You have to beat them. I'm looking at OKC. Obviously, you have to beat them. Minnesota Knicks, you have to beat them. So what? That's 4 games right there that they should win. Now, like you said, I could see them dropping one to Minnesota, but beating somebody else that they're not supposed to as well. So we'll see how it plays out. But the competition definitely stiffens up.
Yeah.
So we should get a good picture of what this team actually is by the end of February,
and hopefully we have a little bit of a different look Sixers
in the middle of
February, because help should be on the way within 10 days, hopefully. So
yeah, because just before we get out of here, thinking back to what you said earlier, and it was sort of what Kai said as well. Moving like a Paul Reed or an Isaiah Joe or a Jaden Springer, you got all of this young talent at the bottom of your bench where those could just be veterans that could be useful at times, even if they're not full rotational players. They could be used.
Who did we trade Tony Bradley for? Was that George Hill? Remember when people were upset about the Tony Bradley trade?
It was George Hill. He was on OKC. He wasn't playing at the time. He was injured. Yeah.
But things like that, what we'll move Charles Bassey, and people are gonna freak out because if Drummond goes down, we need a backup center in the playoffs. The fuck?
Charles Bassey, untradeable.
Yeah.
Like what I said to you, and this is no shot at Matisse, but like untradeable, bro. Like Ja Morant dropped 37 last night.
And Matisse gave him a good fight, bro.
He gave him a
Matisse
hell
made
of a
some
fight.
plays. But you're
that's
right.
one of those where it shows you it just doesn't make a difference, right? If a guy's on, he's on.
Yeah. And to Matisse's credit, not a highly skilled offensive kid. Hit a 3 last night, and then in crunch time, hit a like a running layup.
Yeah, that was
contact.
different.
Yo, before we wrap up here, I do want to get your thoughts on the craziness at the end of the game, because I don't get it, man.
Oh, you mean Memphis fans complaining?
No. The no call on Seth. Like Doc was freaking out. Fans were freaking out. Guys, not a foul.
Which one?
Seth missed. Remember at the end of regulation, Seth missed the baseline jumper and he got hit in the back of the head. And remember, Doc got teed up for it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. I know exactly what you mean. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Not a foul. And I saw like Sixers beat writers like saying, I guess I don't know what a foul is anymore. I'm sorry. Seth Curry, I'm a Sixers fan, guys. Seth faded away from the basket to Jaren Jackson Jr., who was behind him. Isn't that the rule they got rid of, Scotty?
That's exactly what we have talked. That's exactly what we talked about all offseason about them changing. And in reality, it's the
Jaren Jackson Jr. didn't smack him upside the back of his head. He didn't jump
into him.
Seth faded away and got the back of his head clipped against Jaren Jackson Jr. That's not a foul.
It's exactly what we've complained about with Trae Young for an entire playoff series.
Right. And no offense, guys, that wasn't with 5 seconds. You wanted the game. You wanted them to call that to end the game.
And just to change the perspective, imagine if they would have called the foul on the 3 at the end of the end of overtime, right, for Memphis. They didn't call that either. They're not going to call game-changing.
Or reverse. What if that was Ja with no time left, putting up a shot, and he faded back into Toby, and they called a foul there? Would you guys be like, you know what? It's a foul.
Right.
No, you won in. So like that, I don't know, man. Like that
Take
really
the W.
And dude, Doc got teed up. Like he was really pissed off about it, and I was just in shock because like I really didn't even think it was like there was no part of the replay where I was like, I can see that. No, I saw where he got hit in the head. He faded away into the contact. I don't know what everyone was trying to freak out about.
No, and then on the other side of it, Memphis fans were complaining about Seth coming onto the floor while Tyrese Maxey.
Meanwhile, this wasn't like the game winner, right?
It wasn't.
It wasn't a tie game, right? What are you talking about? Like you need that called to try to get free throws?
Beat the Embiidless
right,
Sixers.
What the fuck out of here.
All right, man. You got anything else for tonight? I have got nothing else.
No, I'm good. It felt
good Sixers vibes.
Yeah, it was positive all around today, which doesn't happen often.
Ramona tried to crush us today, bro.
Nah, miss me with that, bro. Miss me. Get the fuck out of here. It is
so whack, bro.
And like I said, we've been playing hypothetical for a long time, for a couple months now, and it's here. Listen, Ben's not going anywhere by the deadline.
Yeah,
hate to break that to people, he's not. But I do expect Moose to be. I do think it'll be an exciting time. That they will be exciting. If it's not, then I'm.
Yeah, if they add nothing, I'm gonna be pissed.
Yeah. Add nothing or add like a 9th player off the bench to help a little bit, right? Like, no, dude. Like Daryl, do what you gotta do. I don't need a big move. I need
Raul Neto run the second unit.
Oh my god. Dude, go give me Alec Burks and I'll be fucking ecstatic.
I'm taking Alec Burks, a spark plug. That's exactly what we need. We need a spark plug off the bench. That's exactly what we need.
Certified bucket getter, bro.
Certified buckets. That's what we need, bro. But that's going to be it for this episode of Scotty Talks NBA. Make sure, if you're not already, as I said at the beginning of the show, make sure you're following my co-host here, Dylan Davis, at DylanJD98 on Twitter. Make sure, if you're not already, following myself at Scotty Drown on Twitter, across all social media platforms as well. You can also follow DSM Media on Twitter at DSM_media. You can also find us on TikTok, where we are putting out content daily.
I'm damn close to a tattoo.
Damn close to a tattoo. We are getting content out daily. We just brought on Kata Hot, and he has blown our TikTok up, and we are loving it. So we're putting stuff out on there every day. You can find that account at DSM Media, and then on Instagram as well, dsm.dosomethingmajor. Make sure you're following us on all social media platforms. Put different content out on each platform, so you'll get a variety there. And then, of course, I want to shout out our sponsors at Manscaped. Make sure you head over to manscaped.com. Let them know that DSM Media sent you by using the code DSM to get 20% off and free shipping. And that's DSM. You get 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. Make sure you're taking care of yourself, fellas. No girl wants to, you're in the new year. You're trying to make
it's Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day. Clean yourself up, guys. Use code DSM. Get 20% off and free shipping. But that is all I got for you tonight. For myself, for Dylan, my co-host for DSM Media. Have a great night and go Sixers. Peace.